spec case that was just sitting up here. Not mine. I'm an Android user.
Oh my.
But so we'll be raffling the.
Is that my phone?
Is that your phone? I was like, just trying to see.
It rang too.
Oh, great. Yeah, we didn't answer it or look at the number or anything.
But we did take pictures.
All right. I got nothing there.
Got this phone right here.
Yeah, right.
I got a flying monkey.
Oh, gosh. We'll wait just a minute or two longer, and then we'll get started. You're in the right place if you're here for the WordPress blog teaching tool lecture.
That's dog food?
You are so smart.
Well, I thought it was tricks or dog food. I think the bone food. Yeah. What's that weird consistency? Didn't quite look right.
No, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna learn to stay here so we can be recorded and filmed.
Go last year, did you?
No, I was thinking I might not have even gone the year before. Where was the year before?
That was Harvard.
No, I was at
You
Harvard.
went Harvard.
No, I missed last year.
Ben, just before you start, I've got a question I'm hoping you can address at some point.
That seems hardly fair.
Even though for Christmas I bought domain names for my kids and then pointed them at the WordPress blog. And when I gave them the wonderful news that they'd been given, their own domain name and a WordPress website for Christmas, I got a couple of eye rolls, I must admit. So if you could tell me how to market this better to my children, I would appreciate it.
They need to have good content first.
No, Okay, so a corollary to that, Rich, is that I missed the boat on buying my oldest daughter's domain name, bought youngest daughter's domain name, have never heard the end of this.
From the one who didn't get it.
The one who did not get her
She's
own
not
domain
your
name.
child.
Right, she's worried that she might not be.
So move to Canada, it's easier to get .ca domain names than .com.
There's so many reasons to move to Canada. That'll be another one. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get started, and then I'm sure we'll have a few other people who will be joining us. This will probably be a conversation as much as anything else. There are a lot of people in the room who are better at WordPress than I am and have used WordPress longer than I have. So I'm sure that you will have lots of things to say. But first off, I want to introduce Jennifer Romig, who is a legal writing professor at Emory Law School. If I haven't met you, my name's Ben Chapman. I'm the IT director at Emory Law School. And we've co-taught this course twice. I'm going to address an early concern, which was, how in the world did you get 3 hours of credit for a blogging class? As one of my friends asked me bluntly earlier today. This is an advanced legal writing class that happens to use different tools. And really, that's the context for this. And also, this is mostly due to Jennifer's influence. The slides are attached already to the course thing, and there's a much longer document with links and resources and things like that that's also attached as well. But overall, this is going to be an overview of how Jennifer and I used WordPress at Emory Law for our advanced legal writing, blogging, and social media course. The course was taught in spring of 2015, also spring of 2016. Co-taught by us, although absolutely this course was developed by Jennifer. It's grown and evolved, and it's just really been a whole lot of fun for me, but certainly developed by Jennifer. We've had about 20 students each time. It's a graded 3-hour advanced legal writing course, which imposes certain requirements on us that we had to, present the course idea to the curriculum committee and get approval to teach the course. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the background there, and Jennifer will jump in when I get off track. So the idea is, why would you even teach a class like this? Why this class? And the idea is that new associates and small firm owners have always done public legal writing. Traditionally, what would happen when you were new to the firm and perhaps you didn't have enough billable work, you would be assigned other work for the benefit of the firm. That might be writing a bar journal note, sending out that client newsletter article, doing the email on behalf of the practice group, that kind of writing. That's public legal writing. It's writing done not for the benefit of a particular client and constrained by a particular client's legal and factual situation. It's done for the benefit of your practice as a whole, and one might hope, for the benefit of the profession eventually in some way. Increasingly, though, when you're doing that kind of public legal writing, it's not taking place using the same tools, the same modalities as it has in previous years. And now what you're seeing are blogging, you're seeing posts to LinkedIn. I think we're going to be seeing more posts to LinkedIn soon. Medium, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've even got firms with Snapchat accounts. So you see this whole variety of different tools for communicating with the public about the services that your firm offers, about what they do. And the thing that's really interesting, especially for our 3L students, is that we've spent 2.5 years teaching them how to write in a very particular way that doesn't translate to the web very well at all. And so part of the fun of the class and part of the challenge of the class is trying to teach them to write short, which is the title of a book that Jennifer introduced me to. and teaching them how to rediscover their voice, which is another thing that we bleed right out of them during 3 years of law school. You know, just take your personality and just let it go. And so we try to bring that back and get them to focus and think about that a little bit. So we conceived of this course as a blending of an education on writing in a new style, as well as learning WordPress as a tool. And I think this has led to this really unique and fruitful collaboration, at least for me. We also decided that we would do everything in one tool, managing the course and teaching the course and allowing the students to contribute to the course, all in the same space with the same tool. And this gives particular benefits. It also leads to particular challenges. So that's the image of the dog food there. We could also say that we were drinking our own champagne. I like this one better. One of the other kind of core thoughts in this, Dave Weiner, one of the fathers of blogging, certainly the father of RSS, has this classic formulation of blogging as being the unfiltered voice of the individual. Our students are actually very good at sharing the unfiltered voice of the individual. You know, when we see them, most of our students actually come to us fairly quickly after undergrad. By the time we're seeing them as 3Ls, they are likely to be 26, 27, 28 years old. And that unfiltered voice is raring to go and looking for an outlet. We want to contrast that and that classic idea of what makes a good blog, what makes the best blogs, with the idea that this is a performative act. You know, you're also creating a professionally appropriate identity. And this is a really interesting discussion to have with students. This idea about creating an authentic identity. You know, there was a recent article in the New York, small digression, sorry, ADD. Recent article in the New York Times saying no one wants to hear from your authentic self. Anyway, check it out, it's funny. But anyway, so what we're trying to do is help them create an authentic but professionally appropriate identity. And this is an interesting platform and area to play around with that sort of thing. That was one of our big themes. The other big goal here was to join some of this thinking about writing with demonstrable competence in the biggest publishing tool on the planet. I think Emily was saying right before we started, it's now 20% of all websites.
It's over 24%.
Over 24% of all websites are powered by WordPress. And we wanted to be able to graduate students from our class, and these are primarily third-year students. Many of the students who signed up for our class were, well, it was split, but several of the students in our class did not yet have jobs. And they're obviously looking to boost their attractiveness to potential employers. And we wanted to say that they had had more than a 2-hour-long, quick overview of WordPress. They had deep knowledge, a relatively deep knowledge of WordPress. And so those were some of the other sort of big themes, big goals that we were trying to tackle. The other thing that we were hoping to do was focus on as few tools as possible. Again, along this continuum of trying to develop deep knowledge of a particular tool, we're still asking these students to do a lot. Overall technical competence among our student body is not, I mean, I think it's fairly average for this cohort, but this is not what they live and breathe. This is not their area of expertise. We're already asking them to learn quite a bit in a relatively short period of time. We didn't want to be flipping back and forth between our LMS and WordPress. So we made the decision early on to create WordPress as the LMS for the course, and for about the first half to 2/3 of the course, they're in our WordPress, the local WordPress instance that I set up. And then for the last third of the course, they're required to set up and configure a blog at WordPresscom, which they then can keep private or make public, and that they invite us into. And there's some requirements as far as what they do at the WordPress.com site, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But again, the focus is on using as few tools as possible. That being said, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but the way Emory works, you can purchase a virtual machine. We did think it was important that WordPress be hosted locally for us. Again, we're trying to sell this idea to the students, and this seemed to be important to them, that this is a safe space. We're going to create a space that is completely locked down, where you don't have to worry about looking silly when you're trying to work out ideas for your blog posts or when you're trying to learn how to use the system. So at Emory, you can rent a virtual machine for $320 a year. And so we rented a machine, followed the tutorials on how to configure, the LAMP stack and WordPress and get all of that installed. For those of you who've never done that before, there are quite a few notes in the longer document that's attached to the presentation schedule. I lean very heavily on DigitalOcean's tutorials. Even if you're not a DigitalOcean customer, I like DigitalOcean, but if you're not a customer of theirs, I think their tutorials are excellent. And so that's in the longer materials, but I don't think I'm going to go into detail on that. What's more interesting, I think, is how do you configure WordPress to work well for you within a university environment. Our university security team is terrific, they're excellent, and they hate WordPress. I get these emails, literally get these emails, yet another WordPress vulnerability. Patch your systems, from this lovely man who sends me this stuff all the time. So, we have one process where we're pitching the concept of the course to our curriculum committee. I have another process where I'm talking about how it's going to be made secure and how I'm going to protect the students that goes through our security apparatus at the university, the Chief Information Security Officer and his team. And so one of the things that we really focused on a lot was security. I am going to spend just a minute on that. Again, there's more detail. There's more detail in the materials, but at a bare minimum, right? When you install WordPress, you now need to change your username from admin. The root user is no longer admin. Change it to something else. You can choose to run before you even get to the WordPress part of this, because WordPress is written in a language called PHP. You can choose to run WordPress under something called SUPHP. I mentioned that in the notes, and if that's something that's interesting to you, I'm glad to talk to you about it offline. But there are ways to make PHP applications run in a slightly more hardened fashion. So I do set that up. The big thing, though, is just a plugin for WordPress. This is assuming you've installed WordPress, you've updated it. WordPress is up and running, you're good to go. You're also going to tell search engines not to index WordPress. Remember, this local WordPress is a very private thing, just you and your students. But once you've set that up, you're going to install a set of plugins. And I wound up installing, I don't know, something like 12 or 13 plugins before I really felt like WordPress was good to go for our students. And I've grouped them into these kinds of categories here. And security is the first one. We used Acunetics, WP Security. Again, the links are all in here. I think a lot of the security tools work about the same. They scan all the files, they check for permissions, they give you hopefully a GUI and a report that shows you whether you've got vulnerabilities or not. They do things to make sure that someone can't accidentally see into the directories where you've got the WordPress files stored, and they make it easy to back up your database and back up your files. all of those things. And it's a free plugin. They've got a commercial version that's available. Acunetics, WP Security, made me feel much better. I also installed a separate database backup tool. I don't remember which one, there's several. As in any web application, you need to be backing up both the files and the database because the application as presented is a mixture of static files and a database. Because of something we're going to talk about in a minute, I found myself backing it up a lot. The next category of tools that we set up were the, oh, and I'm sorry, I just rattled on. Stop me if you've got any questions. Just stop and we'll talk. I want to get to the teaching part. It's sort of why I'm plowing through this. The next thing is administration and administrative tools. If you're using an LMS, you know, your students are auto-loaded. They're going to log in with their regular credentials. You have all these nice things that happen. If you're not going that route, if you've chosen to use WordPress to manage your course, you've got to individually load those accounts somehow. You've got to communicate that information to your students. You've got to address their technical questions. You need some administrative tools that will help you do that. And I used 3 separate things. Simple members only. If you guys take nothing else out of this, any of you who are playing with WordPress, Simple members only is a great tool. Again, all of this in that other document. I'm just not bothering to pull it up. I don't think you want to see pictures of text. But simple members only makes the blog members only in 2 shakes of a whatever, lamb's tail. And so at that point, you need to have a login in order to do anything in WordPress. That gets rid of about 99% of your security concerns. Right? The challenge with WordPress often is that it's public facing, and anytime you have a public facing service, you've got issues that you need to address. So simple members only. Use that plugin, it worked fantastically well. Import users from CSV with Meta was the other thing. So we would take the list of users that we got out of our main student information system, put them in an Excel spreadsheet, make some small modifications, import the whole set of users. They come in as subscribers to the blog. Done and done. Took about 10 minutes, and it makes it much easier to get the users signed in on that first day. And then finally, we used a plugin called Email Users. Because we've done this twice now, we've tried 2 different approaches to trying to keep our students informed of what's going on. And we used one before called Subscribe to Categories that would send them an email anytime we posted something in a particular category on the blog. And so we had a category for course-related, admin stuff. And that didn't work very well at all. Email Users is great. It allows you to send an email to a single user, an ad hoc group of users, or a class of users anytime you add a new post or page to the blog. And it worked out really well and gave us good confirmation, good feedback that the students had gotten the materials that we were trying to communicate to them. So there are those. And then finally, writing and image tools. I mean, it's a writing course. So we added a few things in to make it a better experience on that front. One is Table of Contents Plus. This is like a lot of these other tools that are out there that will take all of the H1s, H2s, H3s in a document and create a nice table of contents, a Wikipedia-style table of contents at the top of the document. Because some of our assignments required the students to write 800 to 1,000 words, we were actually getting to the point where having a table of contents in a longer memo-style post was useful. And so that Table of Contents Plus tool is very nice. Simple Footnotes is another really nice tool. Law students love their footnotes. We tried to get them to do everything in line. They love their footnotes. And Simple Footnotes allows you to put in a short code that says ref, the body of the footnote, close it, and it'll show up as a nice looking footnote or endnote at the end of the article. worked out very well as well. And finally, we use something called FD word statistics, which shows Fogg, Kincaid, and Fleisch scores. These are all reading comprehensibility scores. There's a constant struggle throughout the course to try to get those numbers down. You know, they show approximate grade level required to understand a particular piece of writing. But it was very helpful from a pedagogical standpoint to give them a non-judgmental way to check on, to themselves check on how they were doing in terms of their writing. So we have all of those things going on. All right, well, that's out of the way. And you can go look at that document. Doug.
Did you say the document was attached to the CaliCon schedule?
It should be in this.
No, it's not the schedule. You have to go to cali.org. I found it.
Not on the sched.
Okay.
Fortunately, there are tech support people in the room.
Searching for it as you spoke, and I was not, because I
Oh,
know
because it's not.
presenters can upload materials to the conference schedule.
Okay, I'm sorry, the conference schedule, not the outsourced schedule.org thing, right?
Yeah,
Or
but
sched.org.
2016.calicon.org/schedule, looking at your session, I can't find those
Go
documents.
to session.org.
Yeah, click on the session.
That's on the session. You got it in the session.
I was trying to make it easy for you guys. This is the first time in about 15 presentations I've ever put anything up early. So I want to pat on the back for that.
I've never liked the CaliCon schedule, so that's just,
Okay.
sorry, Elmer.
It's run by the other.
I was going to say, I think that's Drupal. I think that's all Drupal. That's Drupal, not WordPress. All right, let's go back to, and I want to involve Jennifer here in a minute, and I want you guys to see some of the actual work. But in a lot of ways, everything that comes up to this is the preliminary work, which I shouldn't minimize the amount of time that the preliminary work takes, because it was a little time-consuming and required a lot of discussion amongst us to try to come up with a set of tools that was reasonably useful. Yes, ma'am?
No, before you get into that, I do have a question. How did you convince your school that this was? What kind of resistance, if any, did you run into?
Now, when we're talking about program, do you mean WordPress or do you mean the
Just bringing this whole class in, your
Jennifer?
class. I mean, did you run into any issues with that as far as how they were accepted, or did you have to sell it a lot, or?
We had to run it through the curriculum committee, and one thing that I did, which Ben helped by reviewing, but I wrote a law review article about blogging and legal writing and the rhetorical issues in it, so it sort of brought together some of the scholarship in legal writing and showed that it is actually has a theoretical basis, and I did a study of a number of different legal blogs to sort of deconstruct their style and show that lawyers are doing this all the time, so it's a skill that should be taught and can be taught in a law school environment. So I think the article did help, certainly helped me learn, and I think it helped to solve the class as well. I don't remember if you were in the original proposal to the curriculum committee. I think it got approved.
I snuck in.
It came in later, but it basically outlined the class. It talked about how there are some innovative sort of legal writing and legal marketing and legal profession type classes along these same lines in terms of getting beyond just memos and briefs at other law schools. So I tried to study what other schools were doing and also outline what the students would write. And analysis is a really important part of it. It's, we have some reflection and professional identity pieces, but we have, I think, a requirement of 4 analysis posts of at least 1,000 words. And so we talk about, the 5 types of legal argument, policy, precedent, all those kinds of things. And so I think the students find it challenging at the end because they're creating a blog and presenting it individually. It's like a research paper with images and with the living in the environment of WordPress. So we've gotten, he'll talk about this, but we've gotten good feedback as well. It's it's fully subscribed to what we're able to offer. So it's been good.
And I think we still have to go back to the curriculum committee one more time since we've taught it again, just for a check-in. But our reviews have been good, and again, it's been oversubscribed. I mean, we had more students than we could take, and because we don't have lovely rooms like this. But that's a great question, because I think and it does go back to that, is this a 3-hour course? It's a 3-hour course because of the amount of work that we're requiring from the students and the amount of work we're putting into it, I think, regardless of how that work is being published. This is just a different publishing medium. But what I was going to say, just at a very high level, what we were mapping out in the course were ethical issues around blogging. Blogging for most bar associations is a form of advertising. We're fortunate here, Jennifer's friends with Paul Frederick, who's the chief counsel for the Georgia Bar. She comes in the first week to talk to students, to talk about the ethical considerations that surround blogging and offering legal advice, but putting yourself out there on the web. And those considerations run throughout the course. We're always talking about that. We have a requirement that students work out a disclaimer, create a separate disclaimer page. We talk through how you would avoid getting yourself into trouble by going into confidential information, blah, 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 that you might have learned in the course of a representation. Also throughout the course, we worked tools and techniques in over and over and over again. There are things that we take for granted as technical professionals that are just very new to new users. And so we continued to hammer on those things. And some of them have to do with how you do, what's the right way to do markup? What do you do when you get beyond the visual editor and you actually have to dive into the code? We'll talk about, as Jennifer was saying, our favorite class in just a minute. Also talking about images. We know that images are essentially required. And this is, for many of our students, this is just very frustrating. They just want to dive right into it. Or we had a student say, my blog is about the SEC. What image am I going to use? But we talk a lot about Creative Commons. We talk a lot about proper attribution. We talk a bit about copyright. We talk a bit about the technical aspects of just using the giant image, that you accidentally stuck in your blog and all of a sudden the page takes an hour to load. Things like that. We go into that throughout. And then the heart of it, legal analysis. We go into modes of legal analysis, types of legal reasoning, and we talk through whether it's either sort of a shorter developments piece, where you might take one case in an interesting area and do a quick summary. We require students to summarize a law journal article, but in a blogging voice. That's actually very hard. And then we also have a set of legal analysis posts, as Jennifer was just mentioning, that they have to do, where they're synthesizing. Again, if you think about old Bloom's taxonomy, we're moving them up the scale, where they're analyzing and synthesizing a variety of different cases or trends in the law to come up with a conclusion, the same way that you might write a longer piece for a bar journal or even a law review. We talk a lot about voice and audience. Those are some of the most interesting discussions that we had. Finding your voice. We bring bloggers in. We've been fortunate enough to have access to some relatively controversial legal bloggers who come in guns a-blazing and yell at our students. That's kind of fun, sort of. Thanks. And then we also talk about audience and the difference between writing for the other lawyer that you might know, that you might have gone to school with, you might be practicing in the same area, versus writing for that person who's a potential client, writing for the news media, writing for those other audiences that are out there, and trying to figure out what your core audience is. We do a lot to show how the Blog 100 and some of those other recognized top law blogs solve these problems, and how they've chosen a voice, they've chosen an attitude, and they've chosen an audience. And those tend to be the best blogs. And our students' best work is when they follow that kind of model while working to develop this professional identity, which is hard. Okay, let's look at, oh yes, we'll stop there. Let's look at let's talk about our favorite class. You should come up. This is actually the blog itself as it stands now.
So working with Ben has been fantastic because our knowledge base complements each other, and it's really great to co-teach and have someone to bounce ideas off of. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this in a minute, but he came up with the coolest idea to let the students take over the theme.
No,
Are you going
that's what we-
to
let's talk
discuss
about
that?
Go.
Okay. So another aspect of the class that has been to me surprisingly really good is the presentation side of it. So we organize them into small groups, and they give presentations on different aspects of blogging, like creative punctuation, use of images, use of humor, revealing your personal voice and that kind of thing. And for the first time through, he came up with this awesome idea to take those same groups and give each group control over the theme for a week, and they needed to change the theme. They could evaluate different WordPress themes and choose one, and then spend about 5 to 8 minutes presenting to the whole class why they chose it and what they liked about it. So this example here was a student-selected theme, and this year they really liked those slide deck pictures that go, is that the right way to say it? So they picked their revolving pictures, and we just talked a lot about, does this create the idea of sort of a more conservative, cautious law firm, or does this create the idea of maybe a more sort of adventurous, more personal, individual law firm, and so on. So those theme rotations have been awesome. Go ahead.
Let's talk about that just for a minute. I mentioned earlier that it was really important to me to find a database backup tool and a file backup tool. That's because in order to give the students the power to manage themes, we had to make them administrators of the course site. Yeah, I know. Chuckle, chuckle.
Or you can use edit user roles.
See? I'm so glad you're here, Emily.
Just give them theme access, nothing else.
Okay, but we wanted to do more because one of the things that happened, originally they were just installing themes. And then organically they're like, well, can we change the way the content's organized, because the way you guys did it doesn't make any sense. And we'd be like, okay, fine. And so all of a sudden the syllabus is up top, probably where it belonged in the beginning, instead of under resources. So they started moving content around, so they're playing with the menus and the themes, and then finally, this played out to its logical conclusion when one of our students he went plug-in crazy. And all of a sudden we had all these new plugins on the site.
Link checker, broken links.
Broken link checker, very active plugin that emailed us all the time. So that's sort of the thing that's interesting and fun about the course, and also a little stressful, is you really have to be willing to cede control if you're going to go with that. But the students loved it. And they really felt like the training wheels were off. Like they were running the show. And they really did like it. Francis.
So you ever know the name of this team?
No, what is it?
No, I know.
Yeah.
We'll show you.
Precious Light.
LITE.
Yeah, Precious Light.
So how often were you backing it up?
I was backing it up right before I sent the email announcing they were the new administrators. And I had a long email that said, with great power comes great responsibility. Please be careful and think before you do anything. And in 2 years, we've not had a single problem. We have had a situation where, I don't want to go too much into the weeds on this, but some WordPress themes will support 2 menus, and some will support 1, and we'll have people just go nuts and really load up the second menu, and the next group are a bunch of minimalists, and they go to another theme and they can't figure out why we've lost all of the navigation. And so then they start emailing, and you have to sort that out.
As WordPress starts developing towards using the customized menu up at the top, which lets you preview changes as you're going, one of the things that a lot of people who use WordPress as kind of a freelance, I'm going to build a website for my clients kind of thing, is running into is when you preview preview that, that's great, but you can't switch out back and forth between different themes. So there are plugins out there now that let you kind of save instances that aren't fully published,
Oh,
which would
nice.
be excellent for your situation. I don't remember what the name of it is. But that idea, because so many of these things, you're changing the theme, you're changing the menu, that stuff is going directly into the database in terms of settings.
Yes.
And once you've actually enabled it, you can switch back to the theme and it'll remember the settings you use for that, which is nice. But if they want to go back and forth, or you want to be able to say like an instance of it right now, this is this group's version, and then be able to go back and compare and contrast when it's something that otherwise takes a lot of steps to go through and like, okay, now we want to go to this one and we want to do
That's
this slightly differently.
great, Emily. That is something that we would definitely be interested in. And it was also really interesting because we have strong preferences, which are actually kind of conservative and traditional about the way a site like this should look. And you just have to kind of sit on your hands and say, you know, I love that, or not say anything. You know?
I mean, that's from the writing perspective, that's been one of the really great things about the class too, is that, so when I teach 1L legal writing, everyone does the exact same assignment. I've planned it ahead of time. I've tried to, anticipate what might happen with different, common issues that the students might encounter when they write the memo or what have you. So for this, they choose their own topic and they choose their own theme, and the final product looks extremely different for each student. There's just a lot of different presentation, or a lot of different topics, a lot of different styles, and that's another really good reason that I like co-teaching it with Ben, because we can bounce ideas off each other and just make sure we're being very, open and challenge each other, that we're creating a good environment and open to just the different approaches that different students may take. So let me talk now about our favorite class. It was a moment about halfway through this year, and I think this came about because we were getting into using images and going beyond just text in the class. And let's talk just for a second about who's in the class, the level of, you mentioned the tech competence that they come in with. So we've worked with one student who, I was looking at the tweets and they were saying Microsoft Word should be a proficiency. We had one student who was really not that proficient even in Word and had never done a single thing at all with WordPress, just really was not super tech savvy about this stuff. And then this year we had another student who mentioned, I've worked on websites before, I like to go into these work groups and get some, was it HTML to cut and paste and then put stuff in there, and we were like, whoa, don't cut and paste anything into our, into our site. And then also the other student who brought in the plugins and so on. So we have a super wide range of their knowledge of WordPress coming in. But to your point about the class, last year we were really surprised that about half the students either already had been managing something for a law firm, or they knew they were going to be managing something for a law firm. So the fact that they, already needed these skills or had part of these skills further reinforced the usefulness of the class. So that's the context for what happened, which is we were starting to talk about images and also about other social media and connecting the blog to various social media, and maybe I would say we advocate developing a little bit of a social media habit, so that if you're going to be an SEC lawyer, you should be up to speed on what great firms and great lawyers who are expert in that area are tweeting and blogging about in that area. So the blog itself is connected to a wider conversation in social media. And I mentioned, I think in one of the classes, that on my own blog, it's called Listen Like a Lawyer, it's on listening skills, that I had, and I said, look, I don't have that great of tech skills, I like writing, that's my thing, but I was able to embed a tweet in my blog, and it's just cut and paste. It did have some coding, but I don't know what it said. It's not that hard, and you can do it too. That's what I said in the one class. And then I think maybe a week later, we were coming back to images and using images from Creative Commons and talking about that, and we had a little moment where I said, I mentioned embedding a tweet in your blog post, and let's just take the second and show it. So I went to the blog, and I started a new post. We had some students who were writing about entertainment law, and so that was the time when Kanye West was tweeting about he was totally out of money, and they were writing about bankrupt entertainment folks. So we went to his Twitter feed for this example, but I'm going to I actually checked with Sarah. I'm going to go to Sarah Glassmeyer's Twitter feed. And let's see. So I said, look, start a new post. And usually you're going to be using visual, which is what I use. But I said, go to text. And I know if you really know what you're doing, this is like super easy. But for me, I'm like, whoa, I'm in the text editor. That is very strange. I should not be here. That is literally my feeling. So I went to a Twitter feed. I said, look, just find the text to embed the tweet. I said, watch, just copy all, and come back here, introduce it, and just paste it. And I said to them, now look, come back to your regular, what you're used to seeing, and it'll be there. I also, a big thing for me in terms of writing and the platform together, I really push them to use the preview button. It's like like in regular legal writing, print out what you're going to write and then go read it and see how it looks and edit it. That's what everyone should do. So to me, the preview button is very much like printing out a traditional piece of legal writing and editing it to see. So as we showed it this way in preview. And then here's where the magic happened, because Ben said, you know what's interesting about that tweet is that that's a piece of coding. And he said, what would happen if you changed the words in the visual editor? Sarah didn't say this at all. Something like that, I don't know. So I think with preview, yeah. For just a little split second, if you saw that, it used the words that I typed in over Sarah's words, but then the actual, I guess, coding, is that the right word? Help me here.
The code, the JavaScript.
The script,
stuff in,
the information, the magic stuff took over.
The secret sauce.
And reverted back to the actual thing itself in the tweet. So this was really fun because it was about writing, it was about social media, it was about what you see is what you get, but maybe not really. It was about coding.
It was about copying too. I have been really leaning on them about copying. They're thieves. They're like magpies. They steal images from anywhere, and they just cut, paste. There, I got my images. No, you didn't get that. You got that from the AP. Please don't steal from the AP. They will sue you.
Yeah.
You know.
Or Getty.
Yeah.
Or Getty. Exactly. Yeah. And so we're having this kind of interesting conversation because there's a lot of pushback about that. Because properly attributing free, quote unquote, free images is work. It takes a little bit of work. And so then one of the students said, well, is that a copy? Like, no, it's an embed. You're not copying, you're just embedding. And we got to have a little discussion about this and about how you're connecting. You're displaying something from somewhere else within your blog, but you're not making a copy of it. Because they were trying to give me grief about, well, don't I have to give some kind of credit for this and that? No. That's the way it's supposed to work. Yes, Emily?
Important note on this to bring in when they're talking about images. There is the possibility, although most people don't end up using it in WordPress when you add images, to do it by URL. There are a lot of people, an example that comes to mind is Matthew Inman runs the Oatmeal.
Sure.
And people who embed his images directly, he does webcomics. And the Huffington Post put a very long one on their website because they steal all the time. Literally steal.
Yes.
And he just switched out the URL for his image and put something very rude so that when it was grabbed.
Which just sounds exactly like
It's when we
Inman.
talk about visual literacy and image rights, we say, don't end up with a law blog that has that extremely rude image of it.
Right. I want to be writing a law blog where I'm routinely embedding oatmeal cartoons. That's my blog right there.
Can I say two more things?
Good, yeah.
So I have just a couple more points, and then I want to hand it to Ben to cross the finish line. One more to the point of the scholarship supporting this whole endeavor, and what you said about the visuals reminded me. There's another great article from this year called "Articulating the Analysis," and it's about creating your own graphics to support what you're saying with legal analysis, like designing charts and so on. And so that we assigned that to the students this year, and several of them made their own JPEGs or different types of visual creations to embed into their own, or to, I guess, upload into their own blog posts. And that was really cool to see. Ben recommended Canva, is that it?
That actually came from our students. And again, this kind of interplay has been just phenomenal. Canva is an online design tool that's actually very slick, and we had several students do logos for their blogs in Canva, and then also do a lot of additional drawings. We had one student who was just tremendous at it. The other thing that I was going to mention, again, going back to images, again, just the little lanyard here, we wound up using Unsplash so much, and if you all haven't played around with Unsplash yet, it is just amazing. So these are royalty-free, completely, CC 0, royalty-free, no attribution required images. There are tens of thousands of them, and they are gorgeous. And so the horrible thing about this is I think there's some really talented stock photographers who are cutting their own throats here. But hey, I'm just looking at their images. Anyway, Unsplash, as in uncola, Unsplash, that would really date me. Unsplash, unsplash.com. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, a lot more sites out there now. I don't know if there's been a trend towards this, but Pixabay, Pexels, a lot of these places are on that CCO. It's amazing. They don't even require attribution.
It's fascinating to see. I love that. I love that that's happening. There's a little part of me, I'm a hobby photographer. There's a little part of me that thinks this is Craigslist doing in, want ads. That we're going to drive the cost. We're going to drive these are really nice images. But for lots of our students, because we had told them as long as you can justify what you're doing with your images, we're good. A lot of our students took the easy way out and went with Unsplash because they didn't have to attribute, as opposed to using Creative Commons where they did. Okay? So another little image thing.
The final point, picking up on this embedding, is WordPresscom, WordPress.org. I know Ben's going to talk about this a little bit. For me, it was slightly confusing because it seemed like some of the embeds worked at .org but did not work at .com or vice versa, and that's evolving and changing, and he can mention that too. WordPress.com itself changed in the months that we were leading up to having the students launch their own blogs. So just being aware of how it actually works at that moment when the student is going to be using it, that was a little bit of a challenge. And so we had a haiku deck that would embed in one and wouldn't embed in the other, or a YouTube maybe that would or wouldn't. It's this challenge of knowing what's going to happen the day that you're teaching the class on embeds, and which could have changed the day before. That makes it exciting.
Right, it absolutely does. And Jennifer came up with this, the curse of knowledge as relates to the transition to WordPress.com. Our students were really creative. We had people writing their blog on things like free exercise rights of prisoners. We had a terrific blog that was all about vaccination law and took an interesting approach to it. And we had several entertainment law blogs. We had just a bunch of interesting things. But we required them, as we were coming towards the end of the semester, we required them to transition to WordPress.com, take what they had learned from us, configure their site on WordPress.com, transfer some of the posts and repost, and then create 5 new posts, I think. And this all happened within about a 3-week period. This is when things turned ugly. They turn ugly at this time of the semester, always, but things turned ugly there for a bit, and we're like, you can do it. You have the tools. And one of the gotchas was we had said very carefully, you need to do this, this, and this, look for the dashboard, blah, 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 in WordPress.com. We both have WordPress.com blogs. You've got more than one. I think I might have more than one. And that was how it worked for us. WordPress very helpfully, because we're we had been longtime users, had not changed the user interface. They have gone to a new user interface for people who sign up now. And our metaphorical phones lit up as people were already tense. And it was not working, and we had told them the wrong thing. And so this idea of really trying to stay flexible at all times is important when you're doing this kind of thing. You are a little bit on a high wire, just a little bit, when you're doing this. But one of the other great things, for example, we had last year we had someone who got a job directly 100% because of what she did in our class. This year, someone sold their blog to a company before we were done with the semester. It was a blog about gaming law, board game law. And if you want a really interesting intellectual property mess, look at board games. And this student was really into that and was a good writer. And one of the gaming sites out there in the world said, yes, please, and took that before we were even done with the semester. So, I mean, there are some interesting opportunities out there. I think that is about it. I did want to mention two other things, and then if there are questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Not by WordPress alone. Some other tools that we used. We collected feedback, and I didn't even talk about this, but one of the things that we were trying to do is, you might imagine if you're thinking about how would you grade something like this sounds like a lot of work for the people teaching the course. So we moved to a group feedback model for several of the posts that they were creating in preparation for launching their blog. But Jennifer came up with the idea of the students were required to provide this. Also, you see this in the online world a good bit. Students were required to provide feedback by a certain date. Then the student who received the feedback was required to respond to that feedback and also rate the feedback received by another date, and then all of that fed into our grade calculations. That was yes?
Did you use some sort of a rubric to help them with their grading?
We did.
I love that because it helps the students engage the material from a completely different perspective. It allows them to sort of evaluate how good their work was in relation to their peers as well.
This is, I think, an ongoing work in progress. I think this will always be a work in progress because they are such nice people. And you're really getting feedback that is, they did a good job of being positive but giving useful feedback. But I think that's something we'll continue to try to refine.
How many items on the rubric? How deep to go? That's the challenge of rubrics, right? How many different categories do you put in there? And I think one person said they thought there were too many categories, which is a typical response to a rubric. So
Right.
Maybe we might take that into consideration, or we might not. But do you want to talk about the feedback to close out?
One other thing I was going to say, we also used a great tool called Calendly. If you guys haven't used it and you live in the Office 365 world and you need to synchronize calendars, but you want to make it easy for students to set up office hours, to meet with you. Calendly was another tool we used. I use Clarify all the time to create documentation. This was all created in Clarify, which I first heard about at a Cali conference years ago. And then when we were originally designing the course, we did it in Scrivener, and we're both Evernote fiends. And so again, Evernote, something that I heard about, I think, from Rich McHugh years ago.
We used Box for our grading.
And then Box for all the grading collaboration. So there are a lot of these other tools that we were using. And feedback, we got some nice feedback. So it's gone pretty well. We enjoyed doing the class. Comments? Additional things you'd like to share from experiments you've done at your schools, or questions?
I think one of the most common random little things that's very helpful is if you're using a theme that does rely on images and you use something like featured that where it auto crops or it makes like a square or something like that. People are always like, you mean I have to go out there and get image editing software and recrop it? So there's a plugin that I always install called My Eyes Are Up Here. It's just a great name. It lets you put hotspots. They're like, here's where the eyes are. Make sure it reframes it around
This
the
then
page.
is my incredibly strong pet peeve in life is those Twitter images that just show the person's head, eyes from here up. And I would, if anyone could solve that forever, that would.
Because I let Jennifer down. I dropped the ball on that by saying, no, they should crop their images more correctly. Twitter made some changes to try to improve that,
Yeah,
but no,
exactly.
eyes up
Social
here,
media,
I
so
like
was
that.
always we have to do it ahead of time, but no, that's a very helpful plugin, and I also put one into Twitter that lets you grab from Flickr Creative Commons images and will auto-cite for you. So there are tools like that out there. Of course, Flickr also has a ton of public domain images as well, because of the Commons Project, where they have
Right.
a lot of cultural institutions like the Library of Congress that are putting older images in. So there's resources all over the place for images. I like that.
Images are difficult, but we felt like we've made some good progress with educating our students about that, and then also educating them about the importance of images for their blogs, because all of the studies show that you're much more likely to get a click, you're much more likely to keep someone's eyes on a post or on a page if there's an image.
Do you also talk to them about SEO and like upgrading their like open graph data? Because, I mean, obviously there are tools out there that make that really easy, but I mean, I love your plugin with the simple table of contents, but of course if they transfer over a 5,000 page document or, you know, whatever, Word document, not page document, that'd be insane, to WordPress.com, they're gonna lose that access. So there are plugins, and especially if they're plugins that work with shortcodes that are embedded on the page, you're just gonna have gobbledygook.
That is such a good point to make, and again, that's the challenge with WordPress.com versus WordPress.org. I have this idea, we don't want them to spend any money, you know, to take our course other than,
Classcaster.
what?
Classcaster.
Well, that would be another option, but I think for our students who get really serious about it, they're going to move to a self-hosted option, you know, with one of the WordPress hosting providers out there, because they will have seen what they can do when they've actually gotten behind the curtain, you know.
I think we alluded to that and created and saying you have to do categories. So that is, you know, the sort of low end SEO, right? Like having a category helps a lot. And then also maybe, and then also saying, look, don't just take your Microsoft Word document and plug it in with, you know, a boldface heading. You have to actually use the heading, paragraph, all those different tiers of headers. That would be a tech competence issue that we would use in assessing whether they're actually using the tool correctly. Because if it's bold, but it's bold from Microsoft Word, that's not good blogging.
And we did actually, that was part of the rubric, this whole idea of, and I've gotten off my structural markup high horse, but I at least hit it, and pretty much every time I'm in front of them, I would hit it again. And that was one of the reasons we used the table of contents plugin, because it reminds them that you get this benefit from using the table, from using proper headings. We did have a whole lot of people, because so much of this depended on how things are presented in themes, who would insist on bolding, underlining, and italicizing things, just, you know, to add a little bling. One of the other things I should have mentioned, it kind of goes without saying, but every theme presentation, they had to start out by saying whether or not it was responsive and showing us that they had tested on a phone. And we did actually have several issues and some good discussions around that, around themes that claimed to be responsive, but were pretty you know. Yes,
Do you
Francis?
do anything with web stats, like tick counts, or like Google Analytics, or anything like that?
We didn't do anything like that because we had purposefully locked this down so that it was really just us and the students for the stuff that was inside. I briefly mentioned that about their WordPress.com sites, but again, we were very clear that they could keep this totally private and tear it down the day after we were done grading, or they could choose to make it public.
We assigned this one really cool article on essentially how I went from 0 to 30,000 views in 6 months, and it was a lawyer who wrote, what I did was I brainstormed questions that I think people would ask, and I made those my blog posts. Just the actual question, the legal question or the legal inquiry out in the world, and so the questions itself created, I guess, the interest in the blog and so on. But as far as actually having them see analytics, that was something that they knew existed, but we didn't touch it.
I was going to mention one other thing we did, and something else this might be something you could use. Jennifer put this together. We were actually over here, or near here, fairly recently, because the Georgia Bar has started a legal incubator. And we've got 10 students in the incubator. I can't remember the number. I mean, they're not students. 10 new members of the bar who are being hosted at this incubator. And so it was actually very nice. 4 of our students were willing to come over here when they should have been studying for the bar. Were willing to come over and present to these brand new lawyers on here are ways that you can put together a blog in a particular area. They looked at what they considered to be a good blog, an example of a good blog in a particular area, then analyzed why that was a good blog for these new lawyers so they could get the feedback from our students on that. And it worked really well. It led to a very productive discussion. And we are over. So thank you so much. Thank you. That was so much fun. Yeah, that was a blast.
That's also the first thing. How much is our brain is really which helps
Well, I did PDFs. I was feeling so good.
Hey, something I don't know if I totally got it, but
Okay.
can you just again go over what is the benefit to the students to actually do this, to teach them WordPress in depth and why they should use blogs?
So what's happening, or what we've been seeing with some of our students, these are students who are not being employed at the largest law firms,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So they're going either to solo shops or to small firms.
Right.
And so they are often showing up, and there's a presumption that they know this stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like, firms are hearing that they need to have a blog. They should be online. They need to have usually the way it's presented is they need a website.
Right, web presence.
You know, but often the easiest way to get someone up online is to use WordPress as a CMS. And you can just choose to do all pages and no posts. You know? And so our theory was, my theory, this is more my interest than Jennifer's, was that this is a skill that's in demand.
Okay.
Her theory, and also really important, is that these students are being asked to write online. They're being asked to write
And that's a
for
whole
the
different
firm.
skill
It's
set.
a totally different skill
That
set.
I get. Yeah.
But
How to write.
right, and so it's the twin aspects of that that are what make the course kind of interesting.
Got it.
So,
Cool. Thanks very much. It was really
yeah,
very
tell me your
interesting.
name.
Tom Kozlowski from Fordham.
Oh, okay, from Fordham. Cool. Ben Chapman, Emory.
Always looking for new things to help our students do better. So
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
thank you, Ben.
Yeah, see you, Tom.
4 in a row.
Yeah,
Sit up front.
yeah.
We're just saying that there's no way to put like just a table up here.
Yeah.
Sit.
I thought, I thought she would continue it, and I suspected she shut it down, because I think.
Well, I should grab the chairs from the front because nobody ever sits in the front, right?
I feel like.
I'll grab two from this side too.
Even knowing, because it's their personal interest, you know, so.
Then the usual
I
problem,
like the fact that
adjustable
they
chairs.
take this and log it if they're out in the world without actually.
Let's see, is there 4 of us and 1 remote, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
I think so. Wait, you, me,
I'm
Tom,
Jennifer.
Oh,
and
nice to meet you, Rich.
Yeah, and then Phil is remote.
Okay.
there's one more local, but no, I guess
No,
that's it.
yeah.
I'm just finishing a master's in education.
You could do 2 on
One
either
of my
side.
classes,
Yeah.
we did a weekly blog post. I did one blog about, argue that they should be teaching rather than just making. Yeah, so I
That would
posted
be a
that.
good blog itself. Like,
Yeah, so I did that, and we just looked around, so I posted that a couple weeks later, I got an email from Texas.
Phil's gonna be disappointed that I didn't bring the Ziggy out.
I enjoyed your post, and
Well,
in case you're
and it
interested,
turns
here's a
out
couple other
that
reviews, one was
the
something
only
he'd
thing that
written,
he can see
I know about the
is
issue,
down
but if I hadn't have made that.
Really?
yeah.
Where's the
That was, I mean,
Immigration.
I had talked
Oh,
to.
and the first time we taught it, we had a young woman who was passionate about immigration law.
Okay.
And just
said
knew
that
a
Phil will
particular
be able to
area
see
of
whatever
immigration
is-
law very well, and she was really
But
focused.
they're not gonna be able to project Phil on the screen, or they will?
General.
Like, is Phil gonna do Skype from his side and dial in?
Yeah,
So
a professor
if
from
Phil
the
has a webcam, then yes.
Oh, okay.
The law professor up there said,
I didn't even
terrific.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah, because we'll know soon.
It looks like
really?
it's a little like.
And that was like, she set it up, maybe
That's what I was
a week
wondering.
before
I
she
didn't,
was
I
gonna
thought that was
present it
just
to
a
the class.
mounting
And
bracket.
she said within like 24
Yeah,
hours of
black
putting this up, the guy wrote
Yeah.
back to her.
Oh,
So,
no,
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Well, I
particular
didn't
section.
try.
That's tiny, but yeah.
Thanks, Rich.
Alright, man, are you gonna be over here?
I can be wherever you want.
All right, gotta go get
next
the
to
kids
you.
a camp.
Well, thanks again. I'm gonna walk down.
You're gonna put me with Tom, that's good because I can muzzle him. I have nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, there you go. You do. You won't have to see him in any picture.
Yeah, I'm not leaving.
Okay, yeah, I'm just getting water, making a
Okay.
phone call. Oh, there she is.
So we're just talking to, was he the sysadmin or library? Parking lot. He was in the middle there.
Oh, yeah.
So the new building they're moving into, part of it is off limits to them because it's the jail cell that Lee Harvey Oswald occupied.
Really? How interesting is that? Oh my God.
Yeah, it has a toilet and sink, so great city room.
That's kind of awesome.